Enter into a realm of fright, blacker than the darkest night. Your sanity hangs by a thread. Welcome to the House of Dread.
Imagine that you had an unfair advantage in a particular situation. This unfair advantage opened doors that once were closed and made all of your dreams come true. However, every time you used this unfair advantage, someone, somewhere, paid the price. A price unseen but felt, like the chill of an unseen ghost haunting an old creepy house. Would you continue using your unfair advantage, knowing the harm that it did to others? Or would you take the high road, even if it meant giving up everything you ever wanted? Enter Tom. Tom grew up in a small, quiet town where everyone knew each other's names. His childhood was far from ordinary, shaped by a unique family tradition that set the course of his entire life. Tom's family owned a little-known but highly respected butcher shop, famous among the locals for its exotic meats. From a young age, Tom was brought into the family business, learning the secrets of meat preparation and the fine art and science of making the unpalatable palatable. His father, a stern man with a creative mind, believed in using every part of an animal, wasting nothing. This philosophy was instilled in Tom, teaching him to see value where others merely saw waste. As Tom grew older, he watched the town around him change, and drastically. The once thriving local businesses were struggling, unable to compete with the flashy new fast food chains popping up on every corner. Tom saw his friends and neighbors lured away by the convenience and uniform taste of these establishments, leaving behind the unique flavors of home-cooked meals and locally sourced ingredients. This shift sparked a fire in Tom. He saw an opportunity to blend his family's unconventional culinary practices with the growing fast food trend. Driven by a desire to stand out and a deep-seated need to preserve his family's legacy, Tom set out to create a fast food franchise that would offer something different. He wanted to challenge the monotony of the fast food industry by introducing flavors that were bold and ingredients that were sourced unconventionally yet sustainably, according to his family's teachings. Tom believed that if he could package his family's culinary secrets in a fast, convenient format, he could not only save his family's business, but also bring a taste of authenticity back to the fast food world. Tom's journey into the restaurant business was not just about creating a successful franchise. It was a mission to honor his family's heritage and to make a statement against the homogenization of food culture. His deep connection to his family's traditions and his observation of the changing landscape around him fueled his determination to succeed. Tom's venture was born out of a blend of nostalgia, innovation, and a rebellious spirit, aiming to revolutionize the fast food industry from the inside out. At first, Tom struggled with ideas for what type of restaurant he wanted to establish. he decided that since he was a butcher and had so much experience with meat preparation, he'd open a burger joint called Big T's Burger Shack. Tom was also a businessman and realized that although he wanted to do something different, he also needed to have broad market appeal, especially if he wanted to successfully compete with the neighboring fast food restaurants. A burger joint was an idea that was simple and fit the bill perfectly. It was something everyone could understand and enjoy. Yet, it allowed Tom enough room to infuse his unique twist into every bite. Tom worked tirelessly, experimenting with various meats and spices, trying to find the perfect combination that would set Big T's Burger Shack apart from any other establishment. He remembered his father's lessons about using every part of an animal and began to incorporate fewer common meats into his burgers, eventually creating a unique menu of burger options that set his restaurant apart from all the rest. Included in this menu was Tom's pride and joy, the Forbidden Feast Burger. Now, this was no ordinary burger. At 1/2 of a pound, this behemoth patty would be slow cooked over a bed of glowing hot coals. This method, as ancient as time, ensured that every bite was infused with a smoky flavor, a taste of the wild, untamed flames that danced around the patty, sealing in the juiciness and creating an outer crust that was simply out of this world. It was a symphony of flavors, each ingredient playing their part to sheer perfection. Crisp, fresh lettuce, slices of sweet and ripe tomatoes, melted cheddar cheese, thinly sliced onions for a little extra kick, and then there was Big T's special burger sauce, a mysterious concoction that was both bold and elusive, its recipe guarded like a sacred treasure. Crowning this culinary masterpiece was the buttery pretzel bun, its surface glistening under the kitchen lights. The pretzel bun, with its subtle sweetness and hint of salt, was the perfect vessel for the flavorful treasures it held within. The Forbidden Feast Burger wasn't just a meal, it was an experience, a journey of flavors that tantalized the senses and left you yearning for more. It was a reminder of the magic that happens when passion, skill, and creativity come together. Tom was also very proud of the name he had given his work of art. It sounded bold, daring, dangerous, and enticing. In the world of burgers, the Forbidden Feast Burger was a legend, a forbidden fruit that promised a taste of the extraordinary. Big T's Burger Shack started small with just one location, but it wasn't long before it became the talk of the town. The food was unlike anything anyone had ever tasted. It was delicious, affordable, and most importantly, addictive. People couldn't get enough of it. What was Tom's secret? That was something he kept to himself. Whenever someone asked him how he managed to turn something so basic such as a hamburger into a delicacy, he always replied that it was the result of hard work, creativity, and vision. Now, although this was true, Tom also knew that there was more to the story, a darker secret hidden behind his sudden success. As Big T's Burger Shack increased in popularity, so did the number of its locations. It wasn't just a local favorite anymore. It was a national sensation. Tom had accomplished his goal. A lifelong vision had finally come to fruition. he had built a booming, thriving, and prosperous burger franchise, all while crushing his competition, cementing his family's legacy, and becoming a legend in the fast food world. Big T's Burger Shack stood out like a shining star. It wasn't just another burger joint, it was a modern marvel. The burgers were juicy, the fries crispy, and the shakes oh so thick and creamy. You'd think they were right out of a dream. People came from far and wide, lining up even before the doors were open. It was truly a sight to behold. But not everyone watched with eyes full of wonder. Oh no, other burger chains were watching Tom, their eyes green with envy. They couldn't understand how Tom did it, how he managed to capture the hearts and stomachs of so many so quickly. They whispered among themselves, their jealousy boiling over, like a pot that had been left on the stove for too long. The other establishments started sending spies to snoop around, poking their noses where they didn't belong, desperately trying to find any little flaw, any chink in Tom's shiny armor. They watched Big T's Burger Shack like hawks, hoping to catch a glimpse of something, anything they could use to tarnish Tom's reputation. They looked at his suppliers, questioning the quality of his ingredients, but everything was top-notch. They closely examined his staff, looking for unhappy faces or signs of trouble, but all they saw were smiles and laughter. They even went through his trash, hoping to find something, anything incriminating, but all they found were empty boxes and wrappers, more evidence of the untouchable success of Big T's Burger Shack. One thing that definitely stood out to Tom's competitors was the size of his burgers and how he was able to make them so cheap. Meat was an expensive commodity, especially quality meat, but Tom had figured out a way to make half-pound burgers accessible to even the poorest people. It was absolutely mind-boggling. The more Tom's haters looked on, the more frustrated they became. It seemed that Tom's success really was a simple combination of hard work, dedication, and a genuine love for what he did. His passion for making the best burgers in the business was his armor, and it was impenetrable. For now, Tom's critics and detractors decided to fall back and give up on their efforts to bring him down. However, they decided they would still keep a keen, watchful eye on Big T's Burger Shack. Tom, totally oblivious to the jealousy and the snooping of his competitors, simply continued to do what he did best, making delicious burgers. And for a while, everything was going along just fine. Tom was now a multi-millionaire, and if he wasn't in the kitchen crafting new ideas for savory items to add to his menu, he was on the golf course or hosting elaborate parties on his fancy yacht. Tom was living the high life until some serious problems arose at one of his Big T's Burger Shack locations. One day, Tom was immediately called into his office, and his team informed him that some of his customers had gotten sick, really sick, from eating at one of his restaurants. Even worse, a couple of them had severe allergic reactions. The word was out, and now they were being sued. Tom's heart sank. He had worked so hard to build his business, to make it a place where everyone felt welcome and enjoyed their meals. But now this? As if on cue, his competitors, always lurking in the shadows, waiting for a chance to pounce, saw their opportunity, and they wasted no time. Like wolves smelling blood, they called in the health inspectors for a surprise visit to Tom's establishment. Tom knew what this meant. The inspectors would come, looking into every corner and checking every detail. It was their job to find anything that wasn't right, and given the situation, they would be looking extra hard. The day of the inspection arrived, and Tom felt like he was in the middle of a bad dream. The inspectors walked through his restaurant with their clipboards, making notes, asking questions, and examining everything. Tom and his team followed, watching, waiting, and worrying about what they would find. It was a long and tense process, and with every minute that passed, Tom felt his dream slipping further and further away. Finally, the inspectors finished their examination. They gathered Tom and his team to discuss their findings. Tom braced himself for the worst. But then, something unexpected happened. The inspectors were impressed. Despite the recent issues, it was clear to them that Tom ran a tight ship. His kitchen was clean, his staff was well trained, and his food storage practices were above reproach. Turns out, they found no violations during their inspection. Tom couldn't believe it. Relief washed over him like a wave. The inspectors left, and Tom turned to his team with a renewed sense of determination in his eyes. Meanwhile, Tom's competitors, who had been waiting to hear that his restaurant had been shut down, were left disappointed and infuriated. Tom's establishment had somehow passed the inspection with flying colors. How could that be? How could Tom's customers have become ill if his restaurant was impeccably clean? In the minds of Tom's competitors, this could only mean one of two things. Either Tom had paid off the inspectors, or there had to be something in the food itself. Tom's competitors were now enraged. They had all lost a significant amount of market share and profits because of Tom, and they were sick and tired of hearing about his damn Big T's Burger Shack. It was time to get ready for war. One chilly evening, under the cloak of darkness, Tom's competitors gathered in the back room of a dimly lit cafe. The air was thick with conspiracy as they hatched a plan. They decided to send a spy, the sneakiest of them all, to follow one of Tom's delivery trucks to his distribution center. Their mission was clear: to find any dirt on Big T's Burger Shack, no matter how small, anything that could be considered a health hazard or poor working conditions, anything to tarnish the golden reputation of Big T's Burger Shack. Early the next morning, with the sun barely over the horizon, their spy set out on his mission. Dressed in plain clothes, he blended in with the morning crowd, his eyes fixed on a Big T's delivery truck. The spy waited patiently as the delivery truck pulled into the rear of the restaurant and dropped off a shipment of freshly frozen burger patties. Then, the delivery driver climbed back into the driver's seat, started the engine, and proceeded to venture out onto the road. The spy followed behind the delivery truck, careful to not draw too much attention. The truck, painted in bright colors and with the Big T's logo proudly displayed, made its way through the town and into the countryside, finally stopping at one of Tom's distribution centers. Careful not to give himself away, the spy found a convenient little hiding spot to park his car, as he decided he would go the rest of the way on foot. The spy, heart pounding with anticipation, sneaked closer and closer. He peered through windows, tiptoed around corners, and even rummaged through discarded boxes, expecting to uncover a scandal. But what he found was the complete opposite. The distribution center was a beacon of cleanliness and order. The floors, shining like mirrors, reflected the spotless condition of the place. Workers, in their neat uniforms, handled food with care and respect, following every health guideline to the letter. The spy, feeling heavy with defeat, trudged back to his car. He had spent hours circling the distribution center, searching for any sign of wrongdoing, but found nothing. It seemed like a regular place, with trucks coming and going, carrying boxes that looked innocent enough. The spy had hoped to uncover a dark secret, but it seemed like his mission was a failure. Just as the spy was about to give up, he noticed another truck slowly rolling out of the distribution center. Something about this truck was different. It wasn't its appearance. It looked just like all the others. But the spy's gut twisted with a strong sense of curiosity as to where the truck was heading. Driven by this sudden intuition, the spy decided to follow the truck. He kept a safe distance, blending into the traffic, while keeping his eyes fixed on the vehicle. The truck continued moving through the countryside, periodically turning left and right, driving for what seemed like an eternity. All the while, the spy was patient and careful, always staying far enough behind to avoid detection. Suddenly, in the distance, the spy could see a massive building emerging from the horizon. As the building drew closer, the spy could see the Big T's Burger Shack logo on a gigantic sign as the truck he was following made a left turn, pulling into the gated main entrance. To avoid giving himself away, the spy drove past the entrance and continued on for several miles. He decided he would wait until sundown, return to the building, hide his car in the fields, and sneak his way into the facility. That night, the spy made his move. Returning to the facility as planned, he pulled out his phone to snap a few pictures. Then he climbed a large fence and stealthily snuck his way into the building through the rear entrance. The place was absolutely incredible and huge. The air thick with the scent of meat and metal. The spy thought to himself, "This must be their processing plant." And he was correct. The spy ducked behind walls and dodged into corners, making every effort to avoid being seen, and all while snapping endless photos of the enormous plant. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Just another day at the plant where farm cows met their fate, transformed into the hamburger meat that was eventually served to countless customers. But as the spy ventured deeper, a chill crept down his spine. Again, he had the sudden feeling that something was off. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a room and decided to venture inside. The room was cloaked in an impenetrable darkness, the kind that seemed to even swallow up the faint glow of the spy's flashlight. As he swept the narrow beam across the space, row upon row of unmarked blue barrels came into view, stretching out before him like a sea of ominous shapes. Steadying himself, the spy approached the nearest barrel, the beam of his flashlight dancing across the dull metal surface. The spy wondered just what could be inside. With a deep breath, he grabbed the lid, the cold steel biting into his fingertips as he slowly pried it open. The first thing that hit him was a foul stench, an overpowering odor that made his nose wrinkle in disgust. Peering inside, his blood ran cold at the sight that greeted him. The barrel was filled to the brim with a seething mass of dead insects. Countless lifeless bug bodies, their limbs tangled together in a grotesque tapestry. Crickets, cockroaches, spiders, all reduced to a repulsive, decomposing jumble. The spy's stomach turned as he stared, transfixed by the horrific sight. He couldn't tear his eyes away, even as a shudder of revulsion ran down his spine. What kind of twisted purpose could this serve? Endless questions and theories raced through his mind, but he knew he had to press on. Suddenly, the spy began to wonder what could be in the other barrels. Hands trembling, the spy slowly pried open the lid of the next barrel, dread building in the pit of his stomach. And once again, his flashlight illuminated a horrifying sight. Another seething mound of lifeless bug bodies, insects of all kind, tangled together in a grotesque jumble. More cockroaches, crickets, spiders, and beetles, all reduced to a putrid, decaying mess. The spy stumbled backwards, a strangled cry escaping his lips. He couldn't comprehend what he was seeing. What twisted, malevolent purpose could this possibly serve? His mind raced with disturbing theories, each more horrific than the last. Swallowing hard, the spy forced himself to approach a third barrel, bracing himself for whatever unspeakable horror lay within. As the lid creaked open, the same sickening sight greeted him. An entire barrel filled to the brim with the rotting remains of countless insects. The spy suddenly felt a wave of nausea washing over him. The spy stumbled away from the barrels, his legs shaking uncontrollably. This was no ordinary meat processing plant. Something unspeakably twisted was happening here. Suddenly, the lights in the room flashed on, momentarily blinding the spy as he ducked for cover. As his vision cleared, the spy could clearly see a team of plant workers entering the room, their expressions grim and determined. Without a single word, they began wheeling in large dollies. The spy watched in horror as the workers methodically retrieved several of the blue unmarked barrels, placing each one on a dolly and wheeling them out of the room. The spy knew he had to follow those workers to find out where in the hell they were going with those blue barrels. And so, he cautiously trailed the workers as they wheeled the barrels down a long, dimly lit corridor. The plant workers entered into yet another room that contained an industrial-sized meat grinder. The workers wheeled each of the blue barrels up a long ramp to the top of the meat grinder, where, one by one, the workers tipped the barrels, spilling the gross contents into the machine. The spy watched in horror, transfixed, as the dead insects were reduced to a pulp, disappearing into the grinder's whirling blades. The terrified spy began feeling nauseous and was on the very verge of vomiting. He simply couldn't believe his eyes as he watched the ghastly scene unfold. These workers were blending the decomposing insect remains into the very meat products that would be consumed by millions of unsuspecting customers. Well, it appears that the spy finally got what he was wanting: evidence of gross negligence and the company's attempts to cover it up. The spy's fingers trembled as he fumbled for his cell phone, desperate to document this unspeakable horror. With a soft click, the camera captured the gruesome scene: the barrels of rotting insect carcasses cascading into the ravenous mouth of the industrial meat grinder, their twisted remains vanishing into a crimson whirlpool of pulp and gore. The spy's mind was blown. How could this be happening? The very thought of unsuspecting consumers unknowingly ingesting this toxic sludge was enough to make his skin crawl. Suddenly, one of the workers glanced over, eyes narrowing as they fell upon the spy and his incriminating cell phone. A guttural shout rang out, and the entire crew all turned around at the same time, their faces contorted with rage. The spy's heart pounded in his ears as he realized his cover was blown. Without a moment's hesitation, he turned and fled, the thundering footsteps of the enraged workers echoing right behind him. Alarms began going off throughout the entire plant as the staff gave chase. Adrenaline surging, the spy darted through the labyrinth halls, his lungs burning as he desperately searched for an exit. The workers' shouts grew ever closer, their murderous intent palpable in the stale industrial air. Desperate to not let the spy escape, one of the workers began shooting at the spy, each bullet barely missing the horrified intruder. The processing plant was a maze of doors, rooms, and hallways that seemed to stretch on for an eternity. By now, the spy's lungs were on fire, and his muscles ached from the constant running, but he pushed on, desperate to escape the nightmare he had uncovered. Heart pounding, he turned a sharp corner and found himself face to face with a dead end. Panic seized him as he whirled around, searching for another way out. But the workers were closing in, their enraged shouts echoing off the concrete walls. Realizing he was trapped, the spy's mind raced. He couldn't let them catch him. He had to get the evidence out, to expose the truth to the world. Spotting a heavy metal door, he wrenched it open and threw himself inside, slamming it shut behind him. The spy found himself in a dimly lit storage room, surrounded by towering shelves stacked high with mysterious crates and barrels. Clutching his phone, the spy crept forward. The only sound was the pounding of his own pulse. He had to find a way out. He had to get those pictures to the authorities before it was too late. As he rounded a corner, a sudden movement in the shadows made him freeze, his breath catching in his throat. Slowly, a figure emerged, its eyes gleaming with malice. "Well, well, look at what we have here," a deep voice rumbled. "Looks like we've got ourselves a nosy little intruder." The figure stepped forward, revealing himself to be none other than Tom, the owner of the plant and the brains behind Big T's Burger Shack. His towering presence filled the cramped space, a smirk appearing on his lips as he eyed the spy. The air around them grew thick with tension. The only sounds were the distant shouts of the plant workers and the spy's rapid breathing. "Just what the hell are you doing here? Are you trying to ruin me?" Tom asked, looking the spy up and down, his voice laced with a dangerous edge. The spy, still gasping for breath, looked at Tom and angrily replied,
"Damn right, you disgusting son of a bitch! I've seen what you do to the food in this place, and I'm gonna expose your nasty ass!"
"Is that right?" Tom said, with a tone of arrogance in his voice. The spy's heart raced as he stared down the intimidating figure of Tom. He knew he was in grave danger, but he couldn't back down now. Not when he had the chance to expose the horrifying truth. Terrified and confused, the spy began to ask Tom about his motivations to use ground insects in the burger meat. Tom simply explained that insects were cheaper and easier to get than cow meat, and so blending insects with the burger meat allowed him to stretch his supply. This also allowed Tom to make his product more affordable, which explains how he was able to sell half-pound burgers for such a cheap price. In addition, insects were known to be packed with protein, and so in Tom's mind, they actually added vital nutrients to the burgers. At the same time, however, Tom was also aware that people's perception of this practice was at best deeply unsettling, and so he felt it necessary to keep this particular part of his production process a heavily guarded secret. But all of Tom's reasoning and rationale did nothing to calm the indignant spy, who was hell-bent on exposing Tom. The spy promised that he would expose Tom for the lying charlatan that he truly was. "You think you can just waltz in here and ruin everything I've built?" Tom growled, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "This empire is my life's work and my family's legacy. I'll be damned if I let some nosy little snoop like you take all of that away." The spy gripped his phone tighter, his knuckles turning white.
"The world is going to know what you've been doing. You're finished, Tom! Your disgusting secrets are about to come crashing down!"
Tom let out a dark chuckle. "Oh, I don't think so." He took a menacing step forward, locking eyes with the spy. "You see, I can't let you leave this place. You know too much." The spy's eyes widened in terror as the realization sank in. He was trapped with no way out. Suddenly, a dozen plant workers entered into the room, and within seconds, the spy was surrounded. "Give me the damn phone," Tom ordered. The spy looked around at the plant workers and realized he wasn't going anywhere. Furious, the spy attempted to make a final stand.
"If you want my phone, you'll have to take it, you bastard!"
The spy replied with a snarl, his eyes darting around the room in search of an escape. "As you wish," Tom sarcastically replied as he snapped his fingers, and the menacing plant workers moved in on the spy, who tried to fight back, but it was no use.
"Hey, what the hell are you doing? Get back! I said get back! Get the fuck back! No! No! No!"
In the shadow of a scandal that never fully saw the light of day, Tom managed to keep his dark secret from ever reaching the ears of the unsuspecting public. The unsettling truth behind the sickness that afflicted a great number of Tom's customers remained buried, a secret too grotesque for the world to know. As it turns out, the people who became ill from eating at one of Tom's locations and had decided to sue him eventually settled out of court. Then, Tom's attorneys advised him to stage a buyout from a larger competitor, allowing Tom to simply change the name of his establishment and continue on as if nothing had ever happened. The spy who had been sent by Tom's competitors to expose him was never seen or heard from again. All the evidence the spy had collected, gone. And so it wasn't long before the scandal became a distant memory in the minds of both the media and the general public. Strangest of all, even though a certain percentage of the population continued to fall ill from Tom's culinary creations, people continued to flock to the establishment, drawn in by the alluring scent of the burgers and the promise of a familiar taste, with not the slightest clue of what they were actually ingesting. Well, it appears that Tom had done it. In the end, he passed on his family's tradition and cemented their legacy. He was also successful in creating something so addictive that the masses simply couldn't resist, despite the health consequences. What would you do if you had an unfair advantage in a given situation, that while it elevated you to new heights of success that you never thought were possible, it caused serious harm to others? Would you be like Tom and simply ignore the consequences, convincing yourself that the ends justify the means? Or would you take the high road, even if it meant giving up everything you ever wanted? Ultimately, you are the only one who can answer that question for yourself. Just remember, if you ever end up eating a burger one day that makes you sick, it's very possible you could have ingested a delightful delicacy from Big T's Burger Shack.
If you enjoyed this presentation, please consider showing your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. And if you're in need of a narrator for your next project, or you just want to say hello, contact me at thehouseofdread666@gmail.com. Until the next tale of terror, this is Victor Bloodborne. Stay dreadful.